Penguin Random House Audio presents Bring Yourself, How to Harness the Power of Connection to Negotiate Fearlessly by Mori Taheripour, read for you by Mozhan Marnò.
To those who believed in me more than I believed in myself, you inspired me to set out on this journey and find my truth. For that, I will always be grateful. Author's note. I interviewed scores of my current and former students as I wrote this book, and I'm greatly appreciative of their willingness to share their stories with me. In some cases, they asked for their names to be changed, and I have done so. My classroom can be an intense setting, and trust and safety are critical to me. I have thus changed the names and details of students whose relationship with negotiation I watched play out in person, but whom I did not interview for this book. Finally, the exercises I use in my classroom are a key component to my teaching, and I would like them to remain so. As a result, I changed the circumstances and details of the exercises you will read about in this book, while remaining true to their essential principles. Introduction. In a recent class at Wharton, where I teach negotiation, I paired students up and, as usual, gave them a negotiation exercise wherein they each had a role to play. I sent them off to reach a deal in 30 minutes. One participant plays a contractor who is hired to remodel a client's bathroom. The other student plays the client, who's dissatisfied with the contractor because of several missed appointments. When the contractor finally shows up, he uses the wrong kind of tile. The client actually prefers the wrong tile. Nevertheless, she wants a 50% discount for the work while the contractor expects to be paid in full. I was surprised to see that one team, Brett and Angela, returned to class after 10 minutes without a deal. It's not unusual for students to reach a stalemate, but they usually spend all 30 minutes trying to find a compromise. By this point in the semester, students had developed reputations. Brett, who played the contractor, was a highly competitive, win-at-all-costs type of negotiator. He was headed to a banking job in Manhattan after graduation, and the guy oozed confidence. Angela, who played the client, was far less tough and had always been more collaborative in class. She was always friendly, but fairly quiet. This was the first time in class when she didn't get to a deal, so I was a bit surprised. It turned out neither one thought they could find a solution without the other person losing. They believed that the deal had no positive bargaining zone, a term used to describe the opportunity to identify shared interests, allowing negotiators to find common ground and compromise. Brett and Angela concluded that there was no positive bargaining zone early and decided not to waste any more time going back and forth. They agreed to resort to legal action, which is the last option in this particular case. Brett and Angela were surprised when their classmates trickled in near the end of the time limit, reporting favorable results of their deals. It became clear that this exercise had many possible unique outcomes that made sense for both the contractor and the client. What happened? What had they missed? Brett was upset because the outcome reaffirmed his reputation as a difficult person. Angela was upset because she'd let her fear and anxiety get the best of her. She planned to go into the male-dominated field of commercial real estate and considered the exercise practice for how not to back down to someone like Brett. At the outset of the exercise, when she was first paired with Brett, she told herself, "Nice guys finish last, and tough negotiators win." So what do you get when you put a fiercely competitive and uncompromising negotiator together with one who is acting like an equally competitive and uncompromising negotiator? Deadlock. A lose-lose outcome. This isn't always the case between two genuinely competitive negotiators. Sure, sometimes it ends up in deadlock, but that's true in any negotiation. But when you're just pretending to be competitive, you're not going to get your best deal. You must bring the best version of yourself to get the best deal. The fact that Angela was pretending to be someone who she wasn't, tough as nails, instead of using her authentic strength, changed the dynamic of the conversation. I see this pitfall all the time. People like Angela, who are more accommodating in their negotiation style, often try to change. They try to take on a more aggressive persona because they believe competitive negotiators are often the winners and the nice guys always lose. They think they have to be uber aggressive, like Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank or sports agent Drew Rosenhaus. They blame their disappointment in negotiation results on the fact that they aren't tough enough. It's a reasonable position, born from eons of social conditioning that says if you encounter a bully on a playground, act tougher than you are. But when you do, you're so busy trying to keep track of your alternate personality that you're less comfortable maneuvering and pivoting as the negotiation demands. Too much pretense doesn't allow for clarity of thought or allow you to be truly present. There are ways to deal with negotiators who bully, and the most powerful among them is understanding your leverage. Negotiating well does not involve pretending to be like them. The truth is that anyone can be a good negotiator, no matter what their bargaining style or personality. If you blame your negotiation style for the fact that you're not achieving your desired outcomes and take on a different persona, there's a strong chance that it will backfire on you. When tensions are high, you tend to revert to what's most comfortable and recognizable. You become more of yourself, not less. Maybe you bluster like Angela, but the act doesn't land because ultimately, you are who you are. Outwardly, you've now shown what looks like a split personality. It's the gotcha moment for the other side. I've taught negotiation to nearly 5,000 students over the past 15 years. I teach both undergraduates and graduate students at Wharton, and I teach entrepreneurs in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, which is similar to an executive MBA program for small business owners. I've taught in New Orleans, Detroit, New York, and Providence, to name just a few of the cities I visit regularly. I've taught women living in Cairo, banking executives, Chinese real estate investors, nurses, NFL players, and sports agents. And most of them look confused when I talk about the importance of first really knowing yourself and bringing that person to the bargaining table, which I emphasized when we debriefed Brett and Angela's negotiation in class. What does self-awareness have to do with negotiation? They wonder, often out loud. I thought this was a negotiations class, not therapy. I assure them that it is, just as I assure you that this is a negotiations book. But it looks a little different than what you might expect. There are 4 principles in particular that I raise in class and that I will come back to again and again in these chapters. Number 1. Negotiation is first and foremost about human connection. A negotiation, technically defined, is a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. Implicit in that definition is a whole slew of soft skills. How do you communicate in the discussion? How do you go about aiming for that agreement? Sure, some negotiations involve a whole lot of complicated calculations, but you can be the greatest numbers genius in the world and still blow a negotiation if you're not tuned into your personal strengths and blind spots, if you don't have the capability to really understand your counterpart's point of view, or if you can't form a positive connection in the course of your communication. IQ counts for little without EQ, or emotional intelligence. 2. Negotiation requires knowing your worth. I spend a great deal of time in class talking about the role of self-worth in negotiation and cannot overstate its relevance. Someone in class once asked, "What's the opposite of someone who lacks self-confidence?" Another student yelled out, "Narcissist," which I found very telling. The answer couldn't be simply, someone who has confidence? Shouldn't having self-confidence be a norm rather than a put-down? When we don't believe in our worth, we don't see our power. Without seeing our power, we can't understand our leverage, and we can't negotiate to our full potential. Sally Krawcheck, the former head of Citi and Smith Barney, offers one of my favorite examples of this. As often the sole woman in the room at the top echelons of Wall Street, she could have downplayed what made her different from her colleagues or seen it as a detriment. Instead, she wrote a book, Own It, The Power of Women at Work, about the ways she found power in it. She saw things differently than everyone else, precisely because she is a woman. Her gender gave her leverage. Self-worth is a key part of the deep reaches of negotiation, but it's also just the beginning. Negotiation is the lens through which people recognize they need to be better, more present listeners. It's the lens through which they recognize that their outsized ego has been hurting, not helping their bottom line. It's the lens through which they grapple with the scars of their past, helping them see why they are so quick to make assumptions that get in their way. It's the way they explore their ethics and values. Negotiation is the way through which people strengthen their capacity for empathy, a huge asset in any difficult conversation. As my students see their lives through this lens, they come to a greater sense of self-understanding. Their relationships improve.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?